Hey guys, imagine you're stuck in a tiny attic bedroom while the sky decides to pour an ocean of neon green rain that smells like wet dog and burnt toast. Before we crawl deeper, smash that like button if you love getting soaked in stories, and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from, maybe a dry desert or a soggy basement. Now dim the lights, pull your favorite blanket over your shoulders, and let the ceiling fan whine like a tired cat in a laundromat. You wake up to the relentless tapping on the window. Each drop a tiny drumbeat that rattles the cracked plaster and fills the room with the scent of petrichor mixed with stale laundry. As you try to snuggle into the mattress, it sighs under you like an exhausted ghost, while the radiator hisses a sarcastic laugh, reminding you that bedtime is just a polite lie our parents invented. So stay with me, because tonight's rainy bedtime story will bleed between creepy folklore and the absurd reality of trying to stay awake while your ceiling leaks like a busted faucet. Trust me, you'll want to hear how the night finally ends. Under a cloak of creeping mist, the ancient valleys of X whispered secrets long forgotten by the world. Aaron, a youth with more curiosity than sense, and about as much grace as a newborn calf, stumbled through tangled brush and slick moss, his breath puffing white in the chilly morning air. The landscape was a patchwork of shadows and soft light, where the distant howl of a lone wolf tangled with the rustle of dry leaves underfoot. In this eerie quiet, Aaron's fingers brushed against something unexpected, an ancient slab carved with symbols that felt both alien and oddly familiar. The moment his fingertips grazed the stone, a shiver traced down his spine, as if the very earth dared him to uncover its buried tale. The slab's faded script told a tale so grand it seemed ripped from the pages of a bedtime epic, rather than the dusty crypts beneath his feet. It spoke of a prophecy, the rise of a great empire destined to unite kings, merchants, and mystics under one banner. Aaron blinked at the strange revelation, feeling like he'd accidentally walked into the storyline of a fantasy novel, minus dragons, but with just as much danger. The scent of damp earth and ancient ink filled his nose, and a sudden gust sent a shudder through the trees, like the land itself was holding its breath. This wasn't just a forgotten story, it was a call to action, echoing through the veins of the valley, like an old song waiting to be sung anew. Nightfall brought a cold that gnawed at Aaron's bones, but also clarity in the firelight's dance. Surrounded by cryptic allies who seemed to appear from smoke and shadow, he pieced together fragments of the prophecy like a desperate puzzle. The air tasted faintly of burned herbs and old magic, blending the tangible with the mystical like a cocktail, both intoxicating and hazardous. Aaron's heart pounded, a wild drummer underscoring the heavy significance settling on his young shoulders. It was no longer just about survival or curiosity. It was about stepping into a story much bigger than himself. A narrative scripted by fate and sealed by blood. By dawn, the mist hadn't lifted. It clung like a persistent secret, wrapping the valley in a hush that felt like the world holding its breath. Aaron stood, resolute and raw, ready to chase a destiny he barely understood, yet couldn't escape. The prophecy wasn't a gentle invitation. It was a thunderous call, a reminder that heroes are forged not just from courage, but from the messiness of choices and the chaos of chance. With the sun's first light, the quest began, promising a saga where kings would stumble, merchants would gamble their lives, and mystics would bend realities like spellbinding DJs at the turntables of fate. Aaron's tale was just waking up, and like any good binge-worthy series, it promised twists that would keep the world on edge. No sooner had they settled into the rhythm of their march than the desert's second menace revealed itself. Hostile tribes hunting for any sign of weakness. Like shadows born of dust, fierce warriors emerged from behind rocky outcrops, brandishing weapons that caught the sun's glare like angry fireflies. Aaron's group barely had time to brace themselves before trading blow for blow beneath a sky as empty and unforgiving as the challenges they faced. Negotiations. Forget it. Here, diplomacy was a luxury reserved for stories told back home. This was survival, raw and unfiltered, with sand in every orifice and grit clenched between teeth. And as if the tribes weren't enough, the desert whipped itself into storms of blinding sand, swirling like infernal tornadoes designed specifically to grind flesh off bone. The gale shrieked like a vengeful banshee, ripping at their cloaks and scraping poor souls raw. Visibility dropped to nothing but a ghostly haze as gritty particles clawed into eyes and clogged lungs, transforming each breath into a battle cry of its own. Aaron wished for a cloud, a hint of shade, or at least an umbrella. But the desert was playfully cruel nature's own stand-up routine, with no punchline but exhaustion. Every grueling step, every choking breath in the storm pushed Aaron closer to the relic and to destiny itself. The heat, the dust, the threat of enemies close enough to smell, sharpened his resolve until it was sharper than any blade. What lay ahead was uncertain, soaked in sweat and soaked in peril. But one thing was clear. In the trials of the desert, only the clever, the tough, and the slightly ironic would survive. And maybe, just maybe, Aaron was all three, though whether that was good luck or a cosmic joke, only the desert knew. The city of Lumen wasn't just a place on any old map. It was a whisper on the wind, a flicker of torchlight behind ancient walls, and a riddle wrapped in the scent of damp stone and forgotten secrets. As the travelers pushed through the moss-covered gates, the air thickened with the musk of mildew and ink-stained parchment, promising revelations buried for centuries. Flickering torchlight bounced off weathered murals depicting heroes whose faces time had tried to erase, their stories nearly lost beneath layers of dust and despair. Here, in shadowed corridors lined with brittle scrolls and solemn statues, the travelers felt the weight of history pressing close, like a crowd waiting for a pop culture comeback that never quite arrives. Just as the gravity of their discovery settled over them, a crack appeared, not in the ancient stone, but in their alliance. A trusted companion's flicker of doubt morphed swiftly into betrayal, sharp as a dagger's edge, hidden behind a smile. Whispered conspiracies slipped through the dim light, thick as cobwebs, threatening to unravel the fragile threads holding the party together. The bitter tang of deceit lurked in every glance, every half-spoken word, turning the once warm camaraderie into a cold battlefield where friends could become foes in the blink of an eye. Outside Lumen's protective walls, the distant thunder of marching boots grew louder, a grim drum heralding the warlord's relentless advance. The ground trembled under the weight of his forces, a grim reminder that time was a cruel enemy not to be bargained with. The travelers, caught between the urgency of external danger and internal strife, found themselves in a crucible where trust was as precious and as fragile as the fading light of dusk. The scent of smoke and tar from ancient lamps mingled with the harsh clang of swords being readied, a symphony of impending chaos awaiting its crescendo. The air rippled with tension at the confluence of the twin rivers, where shimmering currents met like old rivals forced into uneasy alliance. Armies stretched their lines along the muddy banks, dust mixing with the sharp scent of damp earth and sweat, less a battlefield, more an enormous, grim picnic for war-hardened souls. Aaron stood at the forefront, his cloak billowing as if it had a life of its own, eyes flickering between the relic strapped to his belt and the mass of people he'd gathered from the far corners of the empire. The distant clang of steel against steel echoed like a savage symphony. It was clear this clash would be remembered, or at least cited by bards as an epic drama, with all the melodrama of a soap opera. In that moment, the rivers seemed to roar approval, eager for the chaos yet to come. The battle erupted like a thunderclap, soldiers crashing into one another with the sound of breaking branches and desperate screams, a twisted orchestra of war. Arrows zipped through the sky, stabbing at clouds rather than enemies, while the riverbanks quickly turned to a slurry of mud, blood, and discarded hopes. The ground shook beneath the pounding feet, and the acrid stench of burning wood and iron filled the air, making even the hardiest soldiers' throat burn. Aaron was caught in the swirling maelstrom, torn between gripping the relic's legendary power or relying on the ragtag unity forged beneath this patchwork banner. Around him, comrades shouted his name. Hope and fear, tangled like the roots of the ancient trees lining the banks. Time slowed to a crawl when a sudden charge split the battle line, fracturing the delicate equilibrium with the raw brutality of survival instinct. Aaron dove into the fray, not with the flashy power of the relic, but with sword and sweat, leading his people like a man who had nothing left to lose, except, perhaps, the empire itself. The clash of wills sparked electric tension in the air. The homely smell of sweat mixed with the sharp bite of river water, splashed as soldiers stumbled and fought desperately. It was a mess, loud, ugly, and totally gripping. The kind of mess stories were made from. The unity he'd fought so hard to build glimmered, fragile but fierce, like a campfire threatening to outlast the cold night. At the moment, his muscles ached and his soul teetered on the edge. Aaron made his choice to trust the people he'd united rather than the tempting, unpredictable might of the relic. With a rallying cry that cut through battle like a flare, he urged his forces onward, strengthening the bond that no magic could replace. Around him, the tides of battle turned, as if the rivers themselves decided that the human spirit deserved more than destruction. The outcome wasn't just the fall or rise of an empire. It was a testament to the strength found when diverse peoples stand as one. And as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of blood and fire, the destiny of the empire was sealed not by a relic, but by the hearts of its people. In a twist that would give even the most seasoned soothsayer a headache. The prophecy they'd labored so desperately to fulfill didn't unravel in the grand, apocalyptic calamity they'd envisioned. Instead, it bloomed quietly, like a stubborn weed pushing through concrete, surprising everyone by heralding unity rather than destruction. The heroes realized their battles had sewn together something far sturdier than alliances, a shared trust, fragile as spun glass, yet more enduring than steel. This unexpected fulfillment was the universe's cheeky way of reminding them that destiny rarely checks a script before improvising. Laughter echoed across campfires as they toasted to irony, knowing full well that legends have a way of telling the truth with a wink and a smirk. The legacy these tireless souls crafted was etched into the landscape itself. A patchwork of villages, temples, and thriving marketplaces that pulsed with life like a heartbeat against old scars. Every cobblestone seemed to remember their footsteps, worn smooth by hope and hardship alike. The air was thick with the scent of fresh bread, sizzling meats, and the odd whiff of something suspiciously like victory, plus a hint of goat in the distance. Because hey, nothing's perfect. Children played where once there had been despair, their laughter a sharp, sweet contrast to the silence of lost friends. These survivors weren't just builders of walls or wielders of swords. They were architects of a future, laying foundations as enduring as the stars themselves. And so, under star-studded skies that stretched forever, the last echoes of their journey transformed into the foundation of something greater than any one hero or battle. This was no fairy tale with a tidy happily ever after, but a messy, vibrant saga of survival, hope, and unexpected friendship. The land thrived, not because the prophecy was beautifully fulfilled like some perfect script, but because these flawed, fierce souls dared to keep walking forward, their echoes carried on the wind, sometimes a solemn whisper, sometimes a raucous laugh, reminding all who listened that even the darkest nights give way to new dawns, often in the most surprising, downright weird ways imaginable. Beneath the scorching sun of Solara, where the sands whisper secrets older than time itself, young Aaron labored hunched over his cramped desk. Ink stains smudged across his fingers and face. The kingdom, a sprawling tapestry of dusty markets and towering sandstone palaces, teemed with rumors as relentless as the desert wind. One ordinary afternoon, while scavenging through the ruins by the oasis, Aaron's fingertips brushed against something cold and jagged, a half-buried tablet etched with strange symbols that shimmered faintly under the fading sun. It smelled of ancient dust and forgotten memories, as if the desert had been holding its breath for centuries, waiting for this moment to be unearthed. With a gulp of sand-thickened air, Aaron cracked a grin. This was no ordinary relic. It was a map to a lost library, hidden beneath the endless waves of golden grit. Aaron could almost taste the grit of the desert on his tongue as he prepared for the journey ahead, his fingers trembling with excitement and the sharp bite of anxiety. The desert nights were cold enough to steal your breath, and he knew the path would be littered with more than just snakes and scorpions. The desert had a nasty habit of swallowing fools whole, yet with every step towards the horizon, he felt the weight of history press upon him, like a dusty cloak stitched with secrets and danger. His resolve was as brittle as the cracked clay beneath his sandals, yet fiercer still, especially when he recalled the haughty smirks of the warlords in the palace halls, tasting their lust for control. If the whispers spoke true, the library's knowledge could topple thrones or save kingdoms. Solara's desert was no kindly storyteller. It was a grizzled trickster that whispered false promises to those who dared listen too closely. Sandstorms roared like beasts with claws that could shred leather and flesh alike, turning day into a murky nightmare of swirling grit and shadow. Aaron's scribbled notes became blurred with sweat and sand, the tablet's fragile edges crumbling beneath his fingertips. A cruel reminder that some secrets preferred the dark, where only the desperate or the mad dared tread. Humor was a scarce commodity here, except when Aaron muttered bitterly to himself about how his quest felt suspiciously like a bad RPG questline, minus save points, and with twice the chance of death. Yet the desert's breath was steady, urging him onward, weaving an intricate dance of danger and discovery. Aaron's boots crunched against the blistering sands as he strode toward the legendary oasis. A glittering mirage nestled like a jewel amidst the endless desert's roasted bones. The air smelled of burnt date palms and something faintly sour, like a camel had just belched in honor of his arrival. Heat shimmered in the horizon, bending reality with that familiar desert trickery, while distant hawks cried overhead, as if mocking his quest. This wasn't some tourist's postcard spot. The oracle's sanctuary was cloaked in myth and danger, a place where legends whispered on the wind, and men often found their doom doubling as bedtime stories. Aaron squinted past the swaying palm fronds and cracked mud, his heart hammered with a mix of hope and dread. It was time to find the truth. The oracle herself appeared more mysterious than Aaron had imagined. Draped in tattered silks, stained with sand and secrets, eyes gleaming like bits of broken glass, reflecting fires long extinguished. Her voice rasped like old parchment sliding open, warning that a cursed guardian lurked nearby, a shadow wrapped in bones and bitterness, hungry for intruders. She spun a riddle, all twist and turn, claiming it held the key, but it felt more like a cosmic joke, a puzzle wrapped in an ancient mumble that would make even the Sphinx facepalm. Yet Aaron's gut whispered that deciphering this enigma was his only chance. Ignoring it was like trying to outrun quicksand with lead boots. The oracle's words lingered, a ghostly echo that danced at the edges of his mind, sharper than a sandstorm's bite, forced to swallow pride like a lump of dry sand. Aaron sought allies among the desert nomads, figures as rough and weathered as the rocks themselves, but eyes sharp and steady like a hawk's gaze on a hare. Their leader, a woman with scars that told stories worse than most epics, assessed Aaron with a twitch of a crooked smile, as if deciding whether he was more trouble or dinner. These desert ghosts knew the land's cruel secrets. Their trust wasn't given lightly, and their loyalty was a rare oasis in a world full of shifting dunes. Aaron's survival now hinged not just on riddles and cursed guardians, but on bridging worlds between the outsider's desperate hope and the nomad's wary acceptance. The desert's oppressive heat suddenly felt a little less suffocating, replaced by a spark of tense possibility as twilight washed over sand and sky like spilled ink. Aaron replayed the oracle's riddle in his mind, the mercenaries lurking like vultures, and the nomad's quiet strength swelling beneath his skin like an unseen heartbeat. The desert night promised no easy answers, only shadows longer than regrets and whispers louder than the wind. Humor flickered in his thoughts. Maybe this was all just bad fan fiction, some cosmic prank written by a bored storyteller with a flair for cruelty. But if Aaron was going to survive the cursed guardian's wrath and outwit mercenaries faster than a caffeinated cheetah, he'd need every ounce of wit, grit, and desert dust on his side. And so, beneath a sky littered with indifferent stars, his journey deeper into the unknown truly began. As the group plunged deeper, the heat pressed down like an angry god's palm, and the shadows seemed to have teeth. Suddenly, a wailing wind morphed into a voice, cold, spiteful, and ancient. The sand spirit emerged like a mirage come to life, its eyes burning with the fury of 1,000 storms. It mocked them with riddles and tried to twist their minds, each word a blade that scraped sanity. Aaron couldn't help but mutter under his breath, "Great, just what we needed, a desert version of that glitchy AI from the old legends." Yet, despite the spirit's cruel games, their resolve hardened. Surrender was a luxury no wanderer in the rift could afford. The companions pressed on, their bodies grimy and blistered, their tongues dry as aged parchment. Shadows clung to the jagged cliffs like vultures, and every step stirred dust that tasted of forgotten wars and shattered dreams. At one point, a cruel mirage nearly lured them off a narrow ledge, a siren's song of water and shade that dissolved into choking sand the moment they reached out. Their laughter was brittle, forced, a thin veneer over the gnawing fear tightening like a noose. Yet within the torment, their bonds strengthened each glance and whispered joke a lifeline in a place that seemed hellbent on swallowing them whole. Despite the rift's merciless trials and the sting of that loss, Aaron's fire refused to dim. The dust settled, the mirages faded, and even the vengeful sand spirit retreated with a grudging hiss, as if conceding that some spirits weren't so easily broken. The rift of shadows had tested their heart, their minds, and their very souls, but it hadn't crushed their spirit. With grim determination, they bandaged wounds, shared weary smiles, and plotted their next move, knowing that in this vast, unforgiving world, the real adventure had only just begun. And if all else failed, well, there was always the possibility of just yelling, I'm a leaf on the wind, before charging headfirst into the madness beneath the relentless scorch of the midday sun. The shifting sands parted at the heart of the endless dunes, revealing the hidden entrance to the lost library. It was as if the desert itself had been holding its breath, and now exhaled a dusty gust that stirred ancient scrolls buried beneath centuries of grit. Aaron stood firm, the heat burning his skin. His eyes narrowed against the glare, reflecting off ornate stone carvings that seemed to pulse with forgotten magic. The air buzzed with tension, sharp as the crack of a whip, signaling that something long dormant was coming alive. And it wasn't just the sunlight playing tricks. Somewhere deep down, the whispers of history promised both treasure and terror. And Aaron was about to find out just how much blood the price of knowledge demanded. Suddenly, a deep rumble crawled up from the earth itself, shaking the loose grains and rattling the bones of the ancient structure. The guardian of the lost library, a monstrous figure carved from obsidian and lore, stirred with a groan like thunder rolling across dry plains. Its eyes snapped open, glowing a fierce amber that pierced through the sun's blinding glare, demanding sacrifice before any soul could cross further into forbidden knowledge. The smell of ozone and dust filled the air, mingling with the coppery tang of blood from Aaron's bare knuckles after a narrow, clumsy clash with one of the warlords. It was clear this was no dusty tomb, but a living relic with tempers as wild as the desert storms. Aaron's mind raced as the Guardian's rumbling challenge echoed across the dunes, like a cinematic showdown scene where the hero has to choose between a selfless leap or an epic faceplant. Sweat trickled down his temple as he weighed the price of a sacrifice, none of which included his own dramatic exit just yet. The warlords circled, their impatience flaring like campfire sparks, too eager to see the hero falter or fall flat, because nothing beats a good ancient curse for ruining a sand-caked day. Aaron cracked a half grin, recalling an old joke about libraries and overdue fines, then squared his shoulders, ready to outsmart whatever cosmic bouncer barred his path. After all, knowledge was supposed to set you free, not send you off on a one-way trip to the afterlife. The ancient doors of the library groaned like an old man waking from a century-long nap as Aaron stepped forward, heart pounding, with a cocktail of dread and determination. His fingers trembled as he offered the most precious currency imaginable, not gold nor jewels, but his own memories, slipping through his grasp like wisps of smoke. The air turned thick, tinged with the scent of parchment, dust, and something faintly metallic, the aroma of secrets long buried under layers of time. With a shimmer of light and a sound like stars whispering secrets to the void, the vault unlocked, revealing scrolls aglow with ethereal brilliance, each one humming softly as if alive. Aaron's sacrifice had stirred the library awake, ushering in the dawn of a memory long forgotten, ready to heal the broken kingdom. Within the sacred halls, the luminous scrolls floated like will-o'-the-wisps, casting dancing shadows on cracked stone walls, inscribed with forgotten runes and battle scars of past ages. They whispered forgotten histories and cures for ailments that no physician dared hope to treat. Pages spilling secrets with the urgency of a caffeine-fueled librarian in overdrive. Aaron felt his mind stretch and strain under the weight of such profound knowledge, as if his own memories were the roots from which this ancient wisdom could grow anew. The vibrant glow seeped into the air, mingling with the subtle smell of ink and old leather. And for a brief moment, the library felt less like a crypt and more like a heart beating back to life. Outside, the kingdom began to stir, its wounds aching for this long-lost remedy. And hope, an elusive beast, started to roam freely again, returning to the surface. Aaron carried not only the wisdom of ages, but a humility heavier than any crown. His eyes, once bright with youthful certainty, now held the soft glaze of a man who'd faced the true cost of heroism and lost pieces of himself along the way. The village children who once admired him from afar now looked upon this changed man, sensing the subtle shift beneath the surface. The boy who sought glory had become a guardian of memory, bearing scars invisible to the naked eye. The wind teased the folds of his cloak, mingled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers and distant campfires, as Aaron led the people of Solara toward a fragile peace freshly sewn from the threads of reclaimed history. Peace, as it turned out, was no grand, triumphant symphony, but a quiet, persistent hum beneath the chaos, a melody learned from memory reborn. Solara breathed easier, its wounds closing like healed parchment, its people stepping forward cautiously, but surely into light. Aaron's journey was a bittersweet ballad, a tribute to sacrifice, reminder that sometimes progress demands the loss of what you hold dearest, like that scene where Frodo lets go of the ring, except with more scrolls and fewer fiery volcanoes. His story, now woven into the living fabric of Solara, would echo through generations, a testament to the dawn that arrives not with a shout, but a whisper of remembered truth.